Hi, I'm Joe Entley. Welcome to Chat with the Chair. I'm Chair of the Vigo County Democratic Central Committee. We're glad you could join us. We're running just a couple minutes behind here, but we had such a huge show that we wanted to let the suspense build for our great show this evening. So we won't waste any time here. We're going to go right into our first guest. So tell our viewers who you are.
I'm Mary Kramer. I am Executive Director of Art Spaces Wabash Valley Outdoor Sculpture Collection, which is located on Ohio Street, right down the road from this place.
Well, we are delighted that you could join us, and we're hoping that maybe you could tell our viewers a little bit about your background.
Sure, I'm an artist. I moved here about 20 years ago, and I actually have a master's in painting. Had nothing to do with sculpture in my own work, but got interested in this project that people were trying to start in 2005 to create a public sculpture collection. And it came out of Terre, Haute tomorrow and other initiatives to beautify and liven the downtown and create economic opportunities.
So where are we originally from?
Well, I was born in Maryland. I grew up in New Mexico largely, and I've lived in New England and here and in the Southwest. So I've been around.
Well, those are a few different states, and they're not exactly right next door to each other.
They aren't. I also have family scattered all over the country, and so I have a son in Montana and a son in California and a grandson in California, and so the only thing we don't like about living here is that we don't have any family around. So that's been the least fun part, but there are great people in Terre Haute, and it was a good place to land.
Well, great. So what brought you to Terre Haute?
My husband, Arthur Feinsod, got a job teaching at Indiana State University in the theater department, and he just retired. So he had a wonderful 20-year, I guess it was a 20-year run. He enjoyed it and ready to move on into other things.
So what was the biggest difference? Did you come from New Mexico then when you came to Indiana?
We came from Connecticut.
Connecticut.
We were in Hartford.
Okay. So what was the biggest adjustment you had coming from Connecticut to Indiana, would you say?
Well, I don't know if this is an adjustment or a perk, but actually the people here are just wonderfully friendly, and that's not really true in New England, in all parts of New England. So we really noticed the warmth and welcome right away. It's flat, so landscape-wise, I grew up in the mountains. I lived in the mountains a lot, so that was a big adjustment for me. But,
well, we're hoping that you sense a lot of warmth coming from this chat tonight. So we're hoping that you don't change your opinion about Indiana after you spend a few minutes with me here this evening. But so your educational background, talk to us about that a little bit, will you please?
Sure, yeah. I actually after high school, I did courses here and there, but I wasn't ready to settle down into college. So I went a little bit later when I was in my 20s, and I graduated from Vermont College in Montpelier, Vermont, with a major in art. And then I went on into the Hartford Art School and got my master's in painting.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So did you figure out early on that you were very gifted in painting and art?
You know, when I was young, I wrote, I did a lot of creative writing, and I made quilts, and I did kind of lots of odds and ends of things. I played music. I taught myself to play the guitar.
Wow.
But not much visual art until I was in my early 20s.
Any ukulele playing in your background? No?
I just taught myself a little bit of classical guitar.
Now I'm curious,
No
did your talents, did that matriculate down to your children or not? Did you find that they were gifted artistically or not?
You know, they are, although my oldest son sang when he was all through school and early part of college, and he also did some wonderful ceramics, and then he went on into culinary arts. And
You know,
then
my father was an art teacher and very involved in art, and I think he was very determined that one of his children would kind of follow in that and have that talent, you know, he had 10 kids, and I think he kept striking out with a kid with the, yeah, I mean, but actually one of his daughters is very much so, but me not so much. But boy, we sure tried every angle of the art world trying to see if we had any talent there, but I'm just completely devoid of any talent in that. So was painting then your true love?
Painting is what I settled on, yeah, pretty early on. I started out in stained glass, actually, when I got into visual art. And then I got into painting. And actually my other son, who's now a professional photographer, told me he was never going to be an artist because he thought artists were people who grew up and went crazy. So, and then he turned around and I guess he grew up and went crazy because he's a photographer now. So that one stuck. But.
So, what's your, I guess, your first memory of any artwork that you may have completed? Is there something that's hanging in your living room that you're taking great pride in still, or not?
Yeah, I have works from several series that I've done in my home, and I have actually a woodblock print I did when I was 14 that I really love. It's my favorite thing I ever did in school.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I had a crush on the art teacher. So.
Well, there you go. Well, that's amazing. So you still have that?
I have it, yeah.
Well,
my mom kept it. And...
We might have a museum for you one of these days.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I've shown my work a lot until I got too busy with art spaces and took a break.
So let's talk about art spaces. What was it that piqued your interest to get that going?
Well, I saw I'd heard about some folks trying to start a public sculpture collection as basically an economic development initiative. And then there was a little ad in the paper for someone to start working there, and it was very, very part-time at first. It was about 10 hours a week. 10 hours a week initially for quite a while, and then it became sort of what it is today over the years. But that was back in 2005.
Okay.
And I just thought it was a really creative approach to city revitalization, and it made a whole lot of sense. I grew up a lot in Santa Fe, which is full of art. I mean, the minute you enter New Mexico, you see art everywhere, and it makes a difference. It really does. It defines the area for people. Art and culture is really important to that state, and so it seemed like a really important thing to do here.
Did you find that there was quite an absence of that when you moved here?
Found there was a really strong artist community.
Okay.
There wasn't a lot of understanding about the arts, how the arts impact economic development, and how art and culture play such a strong role in quality of life. I think that wasn't as prevalent as it's become.
So if you can review with our viewers, what then was the project that was underway when you first got started with Art Spaces?
So when I started, Art Spaces had just installed Flame of the Millennium at Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, and sort of named Art Spaces as an institution that would, continue in that vein. And so the next one up was the tree sculpture, doing a project that the city engaged us in, actually to draw attention to the trees that were planted around the Indiana Mile. So that was the first sculpture I actually installed, and then we kind of went from there into other.
So I think that's maybe out on what used to be the 9th Green.
That's right.
Golf course, is that right?
It is.
Yeah, so
a lot of people remember it that way.
Yeah, I see a lot of golfers out there weeping, but no, it's a beautiful sculpture. So what would you say that the creation behind that would be, or what was is that all about the trees then?
It really is. I mean, the artists were the call for artists asked artists to think about how to draw attention to the trees and to do something that would stand well with the stadium there. So they had a lot of things to consider. And this particular artist, people often ask me why, well, I don't know if you know this, but those 4 forms spell out the word tree.
Is that right?
And you don't see it from the road. And we asked him about that when he was, before he put it in. And he said, well, I want people to be intrigued, and then I want them to come in and see what it's about. And then they'll understand that it's the trees, and they'll be there and they'll walk around and see the trees.
So if our viewers aren't familiar with that, you need to go out to Memorial Stadium and a lovely day for a walk to go out there and to take a look at that sculpture. And so if you view it from the
trail side.
Okay, the trail side, then you'll be able to see that. Okay, well,
yeah. And the trail is in the shape of the state of Indiana, so that whole area is really about the trees, and there's easy parking there too.
Yes.
Nice.
Really nice. It is a nice. Okay, we'll keep an eye out that. So we're advising now. We've got new information for our viewers. We did not know about this tree, so that's great.
Another one that I could talk about is right down the road in Gilbert Park. And that particular artist was really interested in why certain types of architecture persist and why others sort of fade away. And she was looking at the houses in Terre Haute that were very common in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And she was really taken with the fact that at that time, working families could really afford to own a house. And they would have these houses have incised front porches, and they're made so that you can add on to them. And there's still a lot of them in the older neighborhoods. So she actually went around and took photographs of about 100 of them and then made this composite design. And so that piece really celebrates an aspect of Terre Haute that has been here a long time.
And that's right down the street, like you said, at 13th and Wabash, Gilbert Park. So
Right, 14th.
14th and Wabash. I stand corrected, but so that definitely is a nice area as well to go visit. And of course, been a number of other projects that you've been involved in, and I couldn't help but a couple weeks ago going to the courthouse here as I was walking across the street, and I wasn't able to I didn't bring my work boots to work my way through the mud that had been created on one of your latest projects. So that's got to be a little exciting for you.
It's exciting, yeah. We've been working on that project is called Turn to the River.
Turn to the river. So we want to turn our attention to the river here. So what can you tell us about this project?
Just to give you a little background, what we did up until that point was basically singular sculptures. So they were designed to fit a particular space. They're called site-specific sculptures. This is kind of a bigger way of influencing public places. And one of the major things about what we did is it involves the community. So basically it's using the expertise and ideas of people in the community to design the places that they use. So and it's an aspect of placemaking that the arts are very, very good at. They really understand that people will often tell you they're not artistic, they're not creative, but yet they have really strong ideas about things, and they actually are, they just don't know it. So we brought together the public in planning and design sessions, workshops, charrettes for years, kind of continually fundraising and getting the means to do so. But all of the ideas in this project came out of our community. And what it is it's turning back to the river, which we turned our back on years ago when we started, putting a lot of industry along it and polluting it. Like many American cities, we're not unique in that way. And basically, along with many other entities here, the city, Riverscape, others that are kind of, also doing initiatives along the river. And we decided that the way the arts could influence that was to create public spaces that would have public art that would, be redesigned to be more user-friendly, I guess. And we were also asked by the city at one point to replace the decaying fountains. So we thought that instead of just a work of art, we would look at the whole space.
So when would you say this project began? What would you say would be a timeline when we would start?
It was about 2012 when we started talking to the city about it seriously. And we also created an initiative called the Year of the River, which was a wonderful year of 90 different organizations presenting events, educational events, recreational events, sports events, all kinds of things related to the river and arts events. And it kind of kept growing out of that. So there was a city planner at the time, Pat Martin, who was very involved, from the city angle. And we just kept going. People were really excited about it.
And you've been extremely involved with that in fundraising, grant writing, grant chasing, and meetings, and city council meetings, etc. So talk about all the things that have done and the fundraising that you've done to try to make this become a reality.
Sure, yeah, a lot of it is grant writing, and then, developing partnerships that will help steer us towards possible funding sources. The Wabash River Regional Development Authority has played a role in the last phase as well as this one, and that's been major. That's state economic development money, and one of the reasons that's so meaningful wonderful is that economic development does they don't always acknowledge the value of the arts, and so to get that from the state level really says they see the value of art and culture. So that was major, and the mayor has been very supportive, and we have Wabash Valley Community Foundation, Duke Energy, many others. The universities have helped in other phases, and so we've had a lot of really great funding partners.
So are you at liberty to talk about what kind of money has been put together for this project?
For this phase, this is about a $1.2 million project, so it's good I won the math award in third grade.
It is. I was going to get into that. You kind of
I
breezed
told you that
past.
before, so.
Well, actually, my crack crew here was doing research on you, but we moved through your education so quickly that we didn't get back to your acumen in math as a champion. So definitely your math award came in handy for that, but that's tremendous. And so when you began the project, did you have any expectation about when that ground be broken for the first time?
We knew it would take years. We really didn't know. We had hoped it would be earlier, I guess, but then there were a lot of other factors at play. So we just sort of stuck with it and kept doing the design work and got to the construction documents and then started to break ground, and it's going well so far. It's the ground over there is leveled and everything is out that needs to come out, and now we get to start to rebuild it.
So ground was officially broken just in the last 30 days, is that correct?
I think it was May 7th.
Okay, so we are right on it. May 7, 2021, ground was broken, and that was done there around the location between City Hall and the courthouse where the fountain used to be. Is that correct?
That's
so for
correct.
our viewers, so tell our viewers a little bit about what the project is, what right now, where it is, and what phase it would be in, and where
Sure.
we're going from there.
Well, we call this phase 1 implementation, and the boundaries of it are basically the entire plaza there. It's a little bit enlarged in our view, and then the connections towards the parking lot a little bit south of City Hall. The way the designers broke this up was into, they call it rooms, and this room they call the celebration room.
Okay.
And it's designed, it's obviously has strong daily use for lots of different reasons, but also there could be announcements, can be a place for small celebrations. So this phase is basically that plaza and then some pathways going out from it. And there's another little tiny round plaza just south of it that we'll also do in this phase. It's kind of a little conversation area. So what you're going to see there is a really impressive new work of art that celebrates our proximity to the river. It has a water feature in it. We were asked to maintain a water feature, so we are doing that. It looks very different than what was there before.
Okay.
And there's a lot of new seating around the edges of the plaza, and also some new power posts that have charging stations for cell phones and laptops and things like that. We really want to attract people to use it and make it accessible for everyone.
So for our viewers, for those that maybe frequent the area there at the courthouse or City Hall, we're talking about the area right now that would be between City Hall and the courthouse. So if you were anxious to get out and get a photo in front of the fountain, you may as well forget about that. The fountain's gone.
But there will be a new one.
There will be a new one. And so for my purpose, from a selfish standpoint, walking the courthouse now, you're detoured, so there's snow fencing around the area where the fountain was and the grass area, etc. So that's all. So now when I walk to the courthouse, I have to get traveler's checks to make my way the long way around. That's okay. It's all for a good cause.
Extra steps.
It is extra steps. It's all for the art, so we're good for it. So as it is right now, that whole area is under construction. So if you're going down there, you're going to see snow fencing and earth movers and people working and people drinking coffee and all kinds of good things. So those things. So that whole area is going to have a complete makeover. Then is that right?
It is, and beautiful new pavers as
Okay.
well.
So for those viewers that are familiar, that area really was just pretty limited to a sidewalk and the fountain, and there were a couple of benches, but it was pretty limited. So that grass area is now gonna all be incorporated with seating and, is that correct?
It is, and then the other thing about, other, other parts of it that are coming up are really interesting too. The area will, you can still walk to the parking lot. The parking lot is getting redone starting, I believe, in June.
Are you talking about the parking lot at the courthouse and City Hall? Oh, wow.
The huge parking lot, yeah, it's out
Okay.
for bid right now.
Is that right?
So, they're saving, a wide area in the parking lot, like if you were walking from the pathway between the courthouse and the jail and you're walking towards the river, it will widen out in the new parking lot, and that.
Well, the new parking lot, I'm just curious when it's a rainy day, because we have a canoe here. So typically, we will just use the canoe to get across the parking lot as it currently exists on a good
Oh, is
rainy.
that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really nice. I mean, it's, if you want to be on the water, then on a rainy day, the parking lot out there will flood. So
I'm
it's-
afraid you won't be able to do that.
No, it won't, that's gonna be fixed. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. But what is gonna happen in the parking lot? Is that gonna be incorporated into the walk then, to the river?
So our widened area will be an event space, and what we are very aware of is there's no big space downtown for events, and even,
Yes.
Farmers Market, because of the convention center, has moved. This area will be designed, the infrastructure will be designed, it can accommodate food trucks and farmers market.
Wow.
Events, because that parking lot is a huge empty public space on the weekends. It's not in
Sure.
use. It's very busy in the weekdays.
Yes.
So we're going to, and it'll have, feature probably some public art, a lot of seating,
Nice.
but places where trucks can come up and do their thing. And
Wow.
so it could be food truck Fridays, it could be lots of different things, farmers markets at different times of the week, whatever.
Now, is this
folks
still,
wanna do.
are we still in room 1 or is this room 2 now?
That's room 2.
Room two, okay.
That's another phase, but we have raised some of the funds for the design of that. We have to go through the design phase. If we get the rest of the funding we need, we'll do that this fall or next spring.
Exciting.
And then moving on from that, from the parking lot towards the river, there's a city-owned property right down here that, at the end by the river where the old single bridge was.
Mhm.
And we've got a concept for an overlook there, would have to be designed and funded, but, so that you could actually walk from downtown on your lunch break, for example, and see the river, grab your sandwich and go sit there and or stop at the government area.
Yes.
And for those of you that use the courts a lot, it will be hopefully a really nice place to
Yeah, that
have a
sounds like-
last meeting before you go in, or, charge up your
Cell
cell
phones?
phone or something.
So the area that was previously the fountain was that people would be familiar with, that that there have been some events, and again, they've been very limited, but there have been some events and the various mayors or city council events that have been with the fountain, they're familiar with that. So how will the structure, the sculpture that's going to be taking that place will be in a similar area, or offhand?
It's a little bit bigger, it's lower, and it occupies a fairly large area, but there's also going to be another, there are several benches very near it, and then there's another one between the sculpture and the courthouse that will have a platform that could be used for announcements. Or even a couple of musicians if they wanted to play during lunch or something like that.
Ukulele or something?
Ukulele,
Yeah, absolutely.
perfect for ukulele.
It'd be perfect for ukulele
There
playing,
you
yeah,
go.
I mean,
Might be your public.
it could be, we're working on it, we got a few more songs to work on before we can actually, have a show, but I'm putting band together though, and now that I know your talent, you, me, Kevin Orpert, we got something going here.
Yeah,
Don Moore singing, I mean, we've got the makings of quite a band. The sculpture that's going to be created there, it will also have, there will be water associated, a fountain or water associated with that?
It's sort of a channel going through. What this artist was really taken with was how we have an urban environment right next to the river, and then we have this amazing wetlands on the other side. So, you don't see cities our size with those two factors at play very often, where you can go so quickly and get into a kind of natural environment like that. And the Wabash is what defines those areas. So he did a kind of, he took an aerial view of both areas combined with the river going through it. And he's kind of recreated that shape as it runs through. And that's where the water will run in this piece. And the wonderful thing too about the top, on either side of that channel, it shows sort of the urban environment and then the natural environment through etching into this stone. And it's tactile, so we wanted to accentuate that so it could be an experience for people who are visually impaired as well.
Wow.
So
Sounds like you thought of everything.
Auditory experience. It won't be a super loud fountain, but you'll hear it because it will fall over the ends and then recirculate. So we try to increase accessibility with our projects when we can in all kinds of different ways.
Now, obviously, coming from the downtown area from Indiana State University, you've got the issue, I guess, of 3rd Street or 41 there. Was that a concern, or was that an obstacle that was considered by you and your committee?
3rd Street is absolutely an obstacle we considered. When we first started talking about this project, I was informed that the highway department of the state won't really discuss issues like that until they know there's a reason for it. And we couldn't really show that there were people coming over here until there are people coming over here. I think it can be addressed. There are probably a couple of different ways. One of the easy ways to start is with traffic calming devices. Because there are trucks and cars that are just passing through, and we all don't always pay attention to speed limits. But there's a lot of severe not paying attention to speed limits there, and you have to really be careful when you come out of Wabash Ave onto 3rd Street and make sure everybody really has stopped before you go out. So there are ways you can orchestrate the pedestrian crossings, and further up, north on 41, you can put lots of people do it sometimes in the roadway. They have paintings saying, showing the speed in big letters so people know to slow down, or there's flashing lights or something. So that's a first way to start. There's potential for a pedestrian crossing, but it wasn't something that it didn't seem advisable to start that first. And plus it would be very costly. And we're a 2-staff organization. We're run by a volunteer board of directors, and for us to start with that would have been really kind of daunting. So we started with something big, but not quite that big.
It's a beautiful project. So with regard to room 1, what is the timetable now that we've broken ground? What is the expectation for the completion of that first phase?
I think our big celebration will likely be in August or possibly early September, but different phases include the foundations for the pieces that are going in are pretty massive, and those have to be poured and cured because you have to let the concrete cure so it's totally dry.
You need a little heat for that, I take it.
Yeah, definitely. And then there will be a lot of concrete work. We have some planter boxes that are getting created, and plantings will likely go in. I don't even know if they'll go in before the celebration because it'll be very hot. It's not the best time to put in trees and shrubs and things like that. But we'll be celebrating August or early September. Pavers is the other big thing. There's some beautiful pavers going in there, and lights and things like that. So new lights.
That's awesome. And so, with regard to the potential down the road with the extension to walk all the way out to look out over the river, is that still then in the creation stage, or do you have that stuck in your back pocket somewhere? Really, it's just about raising the money for that.
Yeah, it's really only a concept.
Okay.
What I've learned in all this process is in the big projects like this, you do a planning, a concept, and then design development is where you get into the nitty gritty of what's it made of, what exactly does it look like, what are the dimensions, how is it anchored, stuff like that, and then you go to construction documents. So it's we have a lot of phases to go through.
Okay.
But there's a lot of things bringing funding to our region, in the near future. There's, for one thing, I know the casino, there's the Wabash River Regional Development Authority, anticipates additional funding for projects along the river, and I think there are many other things at play right now that could help projects like this get done.
So if you had your druthers, what would that look like? What would the big picture of that out there looking out over, would you say, the size and what would be available out there?
I think the piece itself should be a work of art. I think it should be really beautifully designed so that when you're coming in from the west and you see it, from the road, it's just this amazing piece to look at. The concept that we have, the image of it, has two levels, where one level you're kind of going up flat a little bit over the river, and in another you're climbing up and kind of doing a loop around. And there's a central artwork in the center of it. One of the things about our city is it's above the river a little bit, so you can't really walk down to the banks. And if you climb down, it's a little hazardous. The river changes its levels so much that you can't really have a beach. So if you do an overlook that puts you out over the river, you get that experience of water, just to appreciate the water that's there.
Well, considering all the visitors that come to Terre Haute, that come to City Hall, and that may even have to go to the courthouse to obtain documents, it's going to be such a makeover that it's going to be tremendous. I imagine when you were first thinking about this, you never thought this day would come, but you got to be awful excited about the broken ground and that you're just a few months away from this all being phase one completed.
Yeah, I am excited, and thank you for reminding me, because it's a big project too, and there's always just sort of overseeing the major construction is a little daunting at times, but it's very exciting. And I think, this might interest you as being so important to the Democratic Party, is we've always envisioned that this will, maybe bring more people to government. Just being comfortable, in a comfortable space where you run into legislators and folks working in those buildings, I think brings more conversation about it. It's nothing we can ever prove, at least not right now.
Yeah.
But it feels, especially for young people, to have places where you can go and work on your laptop, charge it up, and maybe you run into city councilors or county councilors or attorneys that you want to chat with.
Sure.
I think it's
Or not. But I think and probably the unintended consequence too is I would imagine that you're going to get a lot of students from university are going to find that to be a very attractive area to come and to visit and to study and to do things like you said that would have never.
Hope so, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just awesome. So.
Yeah, we definitely hope so.
Well, we could talk all night. My crew is giving me the signals here, but anything else that you'd like to tell our viewers about this project? I mean, it's tremendous, the things that you've done, money that you've raised, and the efforts that you put into this, because I think it's just going to be outstanding for our community. So anything else that you'd like to?
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Well, I mean, I just want to remind everybody that these ideas really came out of people that live here, and we will keep gathering those ideas from people. We've had a lot of major supporters, and we're really grateful for the support the community has shown for this project. And I can't wait to celebrate. Everybody will be invited. It'll be a big public event. So, yeah.
So I assume if we have some viewers out there that want to help financially, that you would be more than happy to take their checks.
Absolutely, yes.
So how can they do that?
They can go right to our website, wabashvalleyartspaces.com, and there are links right on the homepage for contributing to Art Spaces, for contributing to Turn to the River. And we have a Facebook page, and we're putting things up on Instagram. And we're doing sort of updates about the project on Facebook regularly. So you can stay tuned that way, and the media has been over there quite a bit, and stay tuned that way as well.
So we omitted to ask you the most important question. What do you think of the blazer?
It's terrific. It's really lively. I felt like I should have worn something more lively.
Well, next time, because we got to get you back to get an update on how the project is going, and I thought that might be the incentive for you to come up with a little smart work with. We could work the blazer in on our ukulele stand that we're going to have out by the river.
Sure.
For the stage for our band.
Like I said, we take ideas from the community.
I mean, so if you see any of those suggestions, you can just throw them away. But we are delighted that you could join us. It's been
Thank you so
it's been
much.
a true delight, and we sure appreciate all the great things that you're doing. And I will appreciate my extra steps for the next several months as this lovely project is getting underway.
Terrific.
And we hope you'll be willing to come back and give us an update on
Sure.
all the phases moving forward.
Happy to. I'll bring
All
some
right.
pictures.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
joining us. We are so glad she could join us. This was a great refresher on what's going on over in the Turn to the River project. And if you haven't been out, you might make your way to the area between City Hall and the courthouse and see about all that's going on. It's exciting to see all that construction, and things are moving quickly there. So, one day we had the fountain, the next day no fountain. So we're moving on to our next guest. Tell our viewers who you are.
Vicki Oster. I am Vigo County 911 Director.
Well, Vicki, we are delighted you could join us here, and of course you are in the heart of all that construction over there right now. Is that correct?
I am. We are currently in the jail, sharing that space with the Sheriff's Department.
Now, when we tell people that you're in the jail, you're not really in the jail.
I'm not in the
okay?
jail.
So
No,
we
I'm
just
in-
want to be clear that we don't have some panic on our viewers like
Yes.
we've got a jailbreak tonight or something.
No.
I mean, no, your office is in the jail building.
In the jail building.
Yeah, the building. So talk to our viewers a little bit about your background.
So I was born in Sullivan, but I've lived here most of my life in Terre, Haute.
Are we a Sullivan High School graduate?
No,
No.
when I was very small,
Very
before
small.
I went to school. I
Okay.
started school here.
Is that right? Okay.
Yes. So North High School graduate.
What was it?
Yeah,
Only the
Patriots.
Patriots, there we go. Only the Patriots. Go Patriots.
Yeah,
All right.
and so I worked in banking for many years.
Okay.
So I've done just about everything in banking, investments, customer service. I worked in the operations department and did that for many years, and I got an opportunity to come into dispatch and had never been around it before, but I applied for that and I got it, and that was 26 years ago.
So how does that happen? You're at the bank counting money, and then all of a sudden somebody just comes in and says, "Hey, we need you at dispatch." I mean, how does that go about?
Well, I had a good friend
Okay.
that we grew up with her kids, and she told us to come and apply, my sister and I, and so we went and applied, and we both got jobs there. And so my sister just retired from city police, and I stayed in dispatch.
Is that right? So that was quite a change from the banking world to dispatch, was it not?
It was very much a change. Especially when you have no background in that at all. I mean, I knew nothing about any of it at all, and so it was.
Sound like the perfect candidate.
Yeah, it
I know
was.
nothing about it. You're hired.
It was. And so, well, in my line, we don't get a whole lot of people that have experience. Excuse me. And so you take your chances, It's very much a hands-on, fast-paced, very much stressful job, and there are certain people, I think there are certain demeanors that can handle it and certain that can't. So I just happened to be one of the ones that could.
Well, it starts with they put you in the jail. I mean, not everybody can handle that. I mean, you go from a beautiful bank suite that you're working in to working in the jail.
Yes. Well, I started out at City Police,
Okay.
and so we were in the basement of City Hall.
All right.
And
Very plush there.
Yeah, in the police department, I was with City Police, and then when Vigo County combined, city and county, then we moved over to the jail.
Okay. So what year would that have been?
I started in 1995, and we moved over to the jail in 2000. We became county employees in 2007.
So I'm just curious, when you were starting then, and we're down in the basement City Hall, I mean, were there like 1,000 bicycles down there?
Yes, there was everything down there.
I mean, did you ever get out and ride any of those bicycles? Or just, I mean,
No,
thousands of them.
but once in a while, we had people come in and take a bicycle.
Yeah. I mean, I found one down there from '72 that had been stolen from me. I mean, it was still
Yeah.
down there. I mean,
Yeah.
it was unbelievable. But, so again, you went from these beautiful bank offices to the basement of City Hall, so that had to be quite a shock to your system.
Yeah, it was, but it was something new, and it was a challenge, and you help people, and I do feel like that we make a difference in people's lives, whether it be small or large, to know that we're always there to help, and we're always there to send people out to them.
So what specifically was the training that you had to undergo to start with that position?
Well, we go through a pre-basic, basically. I spent, we had to learn our computer system. We had to learn all the jargon of the police departments, their codes, their signals, their, we took classes. I mean, we continually do educational classes. So we had to get certified in 4 different things plus CPR. So we have to get recertified every 2 years. So that's an ongoing event. You have to have so many credit hours to even apply to get recertified. So it's ongoing, and we go to different programs like NINA, which is we have a chapter here in our state. So they have a conference every year. It's usually a week in Indianapolis. And so we can go there and go to different classes, or they have a national one, which is they just pick a different state. I went to Denver once to a national NITA. We have APCO, which also provides classes and training. So we have an online university, which I assign my dispatchers courses that they have to take to get continuing education. So it's an ongoing process.
So what did dispatch look like for you when you first came on the job? What did that consist of?
Well, there was 3 positions, and we had a big microphone that came up from the desk, and we talked in. We had a phone that we picked up, and that's how we answered the calls. And
just procedurally, how was that call made? Was that somebody called
911?
So they called 911 and that would...
Or city police.
Or the city police,
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was just a receiver, so it just laid on the desk, and we would pick it up and answer it.
And the old rotary dial, or no?
No, we had a push button to dial, but the receiver was just laying on the desk.
Okay.
And then we also had, in case the computer went down, we had little punch cards that we could punch the time on, and then we would write out by hand everything that happened, and then we would punch the card again.
So if I understand, there were 3 people that were responsible for those calls then?
Yes, there were 3 positions. Most of
Okay.
the time we had 2 people in there.
Okay.
One
So
that
how long
did
were your
police.
shifts? How long were your shifts?
8 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 person did police, 1 person did fire. And now I have 25.
Increased a little bit then.
Yes. Well, so have our calls.
Okay. So when you first got in that position, then how many calls in an 8-hour shift would come in, did you say, on average?
Well, when I first started, we were just doing city police.
Okay.
So now we do all of Vigo County, and we do all 911 calls and all the landline calls, except ISU. If it comes inside the campus, it goes to them, but we take all the rest of them. So I have no idea how many would come in a shift when I first started, but now we average about 185,000 calls a year. So it's about 500 calls a day, average.
I used to think my daughter's on the phone a lot, but that's quite a bit.
Yeah.
Holy cow. So when was it that you move physically from the basement of City Hall to your plush surroundings at the jail.
It was at the end of 2006, and then we officially became county employees in January of 2007.
And that's when you incorporated all
All of Vigo
of
County.
Vigo County.
Yeah.
Wow.
So now we dispatch for 12 county fires agencies. We do city fire, we do city police, the sheriff's department, West Terre, Haute, Sealyville, and we send out fire and medical for ISU, and we monitor them and state police and surrounding counties.
Wow. So we still have the little speaker in the,
No.
we've upgraded a little bit?
We have upgraded, and last year
No
we
soup can or anything? It's,
Nope, we have wireless headsets,
Wow.
and we just got, last year, we got approved to get all new furniture, so we now have new furniture in there, so that is wonderful. It all works, it has a lot of features on it, so they're all excited about that.
So now, let's say somebody calls 911, that call is coming into one of your dispatchers that's situated in the jail building.
Mhm.
And so how many people on a given night, like at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday night, how many dispatchers are there in the facility?
Well, I try not to go less than 4.
Okay.
And, sometimes things happen, people get sick or they have an emergency, but I try not to go less than 4. That way I have one dispatcher dedicated to each radio.
So when someone calls in, and are you on these phone calls still?
I fill in.
Okay.
I still have certification, so I can fill in when needed. And I've done that several times in the last year with COVID and everything. We've had, a lot of people out, so
Sure.
I've went in and sat in for a few times this last year.
So if somebody's calling in to 911 into Vigo County and they reach your office, they're speaking to a local person that's basically in the jail building, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what kind of training is ongoing with those on those dispatch calls that you find has been most helpful from your perspective?
A lot of our responses, we go through emergency medical dispatch, emergency police, and emergency fire. And we have questions that have been out. We use priority dispatch. So that gives us the questions and it prompts us to do. It's all in the computer, so it comes up on every call. And so that helps out a lot. And then, a lot of it is just your intuition, your what you're taking from that call, what you're hearing, what is not being said that they're wanting you to know.
So I assume you gotta be a good listener to have that job.
Yes.
And I assume also there's probably a little bit of stress that can occur with those calls on occasion?
There can be some stress, yes. So we all talk to each other, we are all in one room together, so we're all surrounded, and if somebody has a bad call, then, we try to help with that, because if you don't work in that, it's really hard to understand what people are talking about.
And I assume that presents challenges too, because you've got to be calm and you're providing support to people that oftentimes are strangers to you, but yet they're in a stressful situation. So assume you're trying to stress to them that helps on the way and to do certain things. So
Yeah,
that presents its own challenges, I assume.
it does. I've taken some pretty bad calls, obviously over all the years. There's some that stays with you that you will never forget. But you just have to think that every call you answer, you're doing your very best to help them. And that's what we're there for. And you have to have that mentality and you have to have that passion in order to be good at this job.
Well, not that banking wouldn't have its exciting moments, but, checking the ID on the signature with the signature card at the bank, is probably a little different than a lot of these calls that you've gotten over the years, I gotta believe.
It is. It is. But each has their own service that they provide.
That is true. So I take it that you did not regret your decision to leave banking to get into what you're doing now?
No, I never thought I would be here this long, but I do truly still love this job, and I think that's what I was just meant to do.
That's great. So as far as the things that our viewers may not know about, things that take place, what do you think people find most surprising? I think the number of calls that you're receiving is clearly a surprise, but
Yeah.
but what else would you think that our viewers might find surprising about the things that are taking place in that office every day?
Well, I think just everything that goes on behind the scenes. We got named first responders last July by the governor. So I think that we're often, because we're not seen, I think we're often not included in that, but everything starts through us. So if we don't take that call and if we don't start it off right, then that affects all the way down the line. So just the amount of everything and the multitasking that we have to do in there is tremendous, and most people don't realize that. I mean, no offense to any shows, and I love the 911 shows, but that is not what it's like in my office.
Well, obviously the people, those in law enforcement and those in fire prevention here clearly appreciate, I know, all of yours and your office's efforts, because you do a tremendous job. But you're right, I think probably the general public, they probably take it for granted
Right.
that they're making that call, and that people as kind and caring and compassionate as you and your staff are there to answer that call, and it's not being routed to some place in the southern part of the country to take a call. I mean, that your local people that care even more so about these calls. So that is we're glad that we could bring even more credit and light to that, because that's so important. And with regard to our viewers that are watching and their family or friends, and hopefully they don't have to talk to you anytime soon.
I hope not as well.
But if they do, would you have any particular recommendations for them? And again, understanding that it's a stressful situation and that they're not wanting to do this, make these calls, but they have to. Is there anything that maybe if you could give them some pointers thinking about it going into, maybe that might help them when they are making that call?
I would think, first and foremost, know your location. A lot of people, and especially if you're traveling, make yourself aware of what street you're on. If you have an emergency, that's the first thing that we need to know. And if you are in a situation where you can't talk, or you feel you don't want to make any noise, and most people don't know this, we have text to 911 and we can text you back. So you don't even have to make that call, and it won't make a sound. Wow. And we'll still be able to talk to you. We've had that for several years, and I want to put that out there. If you're in a situation where you don't want anyone to know that you're on the phone, text us, and we will get it.
So you text 911. Wow. So we let that. I think I remember that. I think I might have had one of my children in kindergarten might have texted me 911 once. So I had a lot of people show up that weren't too happy with me. But we figured it out. But it's a tremendous. I said we're just testing the program. But
yes.
But that's a tremendous. That is a tremendous thing, and we hope that everybody. So if you have a cellular phone, obviously, then you can text on that. From a landline, that's, I guess, not possible. Is there any way to communicate a landline without speaking then?
No. landlines, you know, most people don't have them anymore.
Right.
But if you have a landline, you would have to verbally communicate with
Okay.
us. But if you also have a landline and you can't, if you just dial and lay the phone down,
Okay,
then we have your address and we will send someone out.
very good. How about computers or an email? Is that any way that people can reach you that way?
We have a Facebook page, Vigo County 911, but if you have an emergency, it's always best to use the phone or to call us, text us. You
Okay.
know, that the 911 Facebook page is not for emergencies, so it just lets you know what we're doing. You know, we put up some things. We tend to make light and put up a few interesting posts, you know, just to make everything light. But we do have, to let everyone know also, we have Rapid SOS that I implemented last year. And it's a very great company that costs the county no money.
What is that?
It is, when you have a cell phone and you make a call to 911, we don't get your exact location, we get the cell phone tower location.
Okay,
So with Rapid SOS, any smartphone, anything you have in your car, your watch, your home smart devices, it will come into us, and it is pretty much on the spot of where you are.
wow,
We had a person that was coming from Illinois and had crossed over into us. We actually got a transfer call from an Illinois agency, and the female that was driving was ill. She needed an ambulance, but she didn't know where she was at, and she couldn't tell us anything, and she ended up passing out. And we used Rapid SOS, and it was pretty much right where she was at.
That's awesome.
So
Well, we've come a long way from that
We have.
basement of City
the
Hall. haven't
punch
we?
cards,
Yes.
yes.
That's tremendous.
So I wanted to put both of those out there
Absolutely.
and make everybody aware that we have that. None of the information is kept with us. So if we use Rapid SOS, it stays for maybe 10 minutes and then it's gone. So none of it is kept. None of it leads back to you, anyone, you know. So it's just a tool to help us locate.
Sure, that's a tremendous tool then. Well, that's great, great to know, and I think that's great advice for our viewers. Any other tips that you might have for them based on all your years of experience in dispatch and with 911, anything that you might suggest that they keep in mind in the event that they do have to make a call?
I'd just like for them to know that, you know, we are all human and we feel their pain as much as they do. We are trying to help them. We are trying to do the best that we can, and we will always be there for them.
That's great. So have you noticed you got to hear in on the project? That's exciting, all that down there. That'll be a nice little rest spot for you and some of your workers, I assume. That
Yeah.
area?
Yeah, I can't wait for it to get finished so I can go out and walk around and sit and talk to people.
Yeah, that'll be nice. Well, anything else that you'd like to tell our viewers that may be on the horizon for your office?
Well, when the Sheriff's Department gets their new building, we will be going somewhere, so I don't know where yet, but we will still be there to, no matter where we go, we'll still be there.
That's great. So we don't know yet where we're gonna be,
No, no,
but you guys are gonna be there.
we will be there.
Well, we sure appreciate it. You do great work, and it's a tremendous service to the community, and tremendous service to, you know, law enforcement, fire, and to people who obviously are in distress and need of it. So it's great, and it's just tremendous, all the progress that's been made. So appreciate you doing
Thank you
it.
so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. It's been a great chat. This has been a wonderful chat. So until our next chat, everybody stay healthy and wealthy and wise. And until our next chat, I'm Joe Etling. Have a great night.